All right, I'm lucky to have with me today Hank Shima, who goes by the name Pecos Hank on YouTube. And if you've not seen his videos on YouTube, you should, because it's, I think, a remarkable set of cinematography about severe weather. Plus, his commentary tends to be a little more colorful, let's say, than many others. So I've got a rambling set of questions. I've been wanting to interview you for a long time because I've been using your videos in class. They're quite well done and interesting to watch. So you are a professional musician. Why weather? Why chase storms?
It's weird, and I could probably lecture more about callings than I could meteorology. It was just a calling, both everything, music and tornadoes. I've been fascinated with both as long as I can remember.
That's a calling for weather. Calling to put yourself in harm's way is not necessarily a healthy calling, but but I appreciate that you do it. So, and I can see behind you what seems to be a map, I'm guessing, of places you have been.
In the States, yeah.
All right. We've got some questions about what you're chasing in Nova Scotia, but we won't go there yet. What I'd like to know, though, is how do you plan? So, April is coming, and presumably you are thinking about what you'll do this year. When you are choosing to go out to do some filming, how do you make those decisions?
Well, I'm not out there to just get tornadoes. That's kind of what a lot of people are out there to see. I'm out there to see thunderstorms. So, I mean, even a small thunderstorm will produce beautiful lightning. And so, I mean, if the GFS is showing a bowling ball rolling over the Rockies, the chances are you're going to get something. So at the end of March, this is one of my last jobs, or not jobs, but hangouts, and then I'll close the guitar cases and I'll disappear for 3.5 months and come back in July and try to chase anything I can throughout the springtime.
Whoa. So you're saying that you actually leave home for periods of months?
Well, I mean, if there's a death ridge, I'll come home and get some of my wife's cooking.
All right. So now you're using some terms here. We might want to remember the audience is going to be people who don't chase necessarily. We have a wide range of people. So you might want to describe what you mean by a bowling ball coming across the Rockies and then the death ridge, what those mean.
So we get these. One of our numerical models that I tend to use the most is the GFS, and basically it's just a computer that puts in all our data, and it kind of helps us define when the jet stream is going to change, and lows and high pressure systems kind of tend to roll across the United States from west to east, and the low pressure systems generally bring thunderstorms, especially in the springtime. So when I see those lows that kind of look like bowling balls rolling over the Rocky Mountains or coming down from Vancouver or something like that, I'm coming from Houston from the south, so usually I've got a long drive, so I've got to leave a day early, and the GFS really helps me pinpoint an area, and it's to me it's amazing how accurate they are. We all like to make fun of them. I mean, if you're really trying to pinpoint it, you don't want to do that. But for broad strokes, it's amazing how accurate the numerical models are becoming.
They are, and with the advent of the new GO satellites, I can imagine these will just get better. So, you see, you call it the bowling ball, but a low pressure coming across the Rockies, and you have some idea there's going to be some convection, perhaps in eastern Colorado. You go park yourself there and then just wait for further updates, sort of. Is that the plan?
Yeah. You just narrow your target area down. You just chip it down, and then once you finally get it down to something small, you realize you're in the wrong spot, and then you got to go somewhere else.
But beyond that, now you have this gift calling that I would say goes beyond many that I've seen, in that not only do you get what seems to be in the right place at the right time for the right shots of lightning or God forbid hail or tornadoes, but you seem to capture then somehow multiple events. You get the lightning and the storm behind it, or sunrise and the rainbow and a tornado. You use combinations that are unusual. So is that just luck, or you just have a better eye, or how do you do that?
Well, I've been lucky for the last, several years, so we'll find out this year if I've just been lucky. But I have refined the art of driving with all my tools. Well, I don't like taking anybody. For one thing, is I can do everything without looking. So I don't have to take my eyes off the road. I can grab this camera, I can grab that camera, I can change all my dials, and then I have my computer screens actually kind of up, in front of me like this, so I can just glance and I've each chase I try to review the mistakes that I make and try to prevent them in the coming up events. So I've just refined it and fine-tuned it.
Well, Hank, I'm going to speak to the audience right now and say, don't try this at home, because we don't want people to be driving and distracted as they're driving. I'm just wanting to say that so we don't encourage people. And in fact, let's get to that topic.
Don't try this at home, because there's no tornadoes at home. You got to go to Oklahoma. Drive to Oklahoma.
One of the things I also want to make sure we make people aware of is that probably the greatest danger, I'm guessing, when you're out chasing is not the storm, but it's the other people chasing. So have you had some bad experiences?
And that's kind of popped up recently, especially it's not the chasers, it's, I guess, storm chaser is such a broad term, so nowadays if you know nothing about storms and you pick up your iPhone and chase storms, you're a storm chaser, and you're categorized with Tim Marshall and Howie Bluestein. So there's a lot of the times, if there's a tornado warning, it's the locals from that town that flood the streets and that aren't experienced chasers. When you're somewhere in Campo, Colorado, where there's a low population and a lot of the more extreme hobbyists are out there, we tend to, I drive in these tight caravans, and there's kind of a code, and the chasers are also really good at policing each other. At first it kind of annoyed me how they kind of tattled on each other and whined, but now I realize that it's actually kind of important. I think more if every little niche kind of policed themselves instead of pointing their fingers at everybody else, the world would be a better place. So there's all that.
Well, I've been part of some teams who were out trying to gather data on the storms, and you drive into town, sometimes two cars abreast and lights flashing, you see mothers grabbing their children because if we're in town, it's not a good day for them usually. When you and the organization of these people who you call professional is quite high, and we do learn from each other a great deal out there in the field. But more and more, there's just, as you say, more recreational chasers who are flooding the road, and are you saying that they are not the problem, or that they are a problem?
Oh, they are the problem. Yeah, and I was one of them. That's part of any trade, but but a lot of them are just recreational people they've seen YouTube. They think, hey, I can get 50,000 views, and then they drive in their truck without any equipment. The tornado's there, and if the storm continues going, it just kind of snowballs. It gathers more and more and more people, and then you mix that with the actual chasers, and so in my experience, there's these events where it's only the guys and it's actually quite organized.
How close? I've seen some of your videos. Have you ever gotten yourself into a position where you regret being in that position?
No.
Liar. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, less and less. The trend has been less and less each year.
And I've seen your more recent videos where you kind of did a compilation of the storms you saw in 2017, for example. Amazing, top 10. I'm just jealous of even one of them. So, if you had to look back over your years, was there any one particular shoot you think that really was the piece de resistance, the greatest of the great?
Last 2016 May 24th, Dodge City cyclic supercell was unlike anything I've ever seen. High-based, well-lit tornadoes dropping down left and right. 50% of the event, it seemed like there were 2 tornadoes on the ground, sometimes 3. Even Tim Marshall said, this was one of the, if I remember correctly, he said this was one of the best storms he'd seen, if not the best. And finally, on the same thread, I posted a picture. Some guy wrote, "That was the first day I ever chased storms."
You ruined them.
So can you imagine the first day you ever chase? You see a dozen, tornadoes, 2 and 3 on the ground. Where do you go from there?
So one question I have is, you have been then in some situations where the tornado has already occurred. You were chasing it and it occurred, and now you're in a new world where you are the first on the scene of people who've either been harmed or at least somehow affected by the tornado. Can you describe any of those situations? What did you do now that you switched from being the photographer to being basically a first responder?
The first thing that I always think is, I don't want to see this. I don't want to look. But it's funny, as you go onto automatic pilot, there's no choice. You just you do what you do, and and the community really starts to grow around you of people that are just looking and searching, and you're lifting up plywood and going hello, and you're going, gosh, I don't want to do this, and there's a car that's upside down in a ditch, and you're just thinking, I don't want to see this, but you run up there as fast as you can, and do whatever you can do.
Well, and that's it's important that we remember when we're in the field that's got to be part of our responsibility. We just can't drive away from the people who are injured. So you're in the field and you're now shooting. It could be tornadoes, but you're shooting lightning. You're shooting just the clouds themselves and the time lapse of clouds. I've got to ask you about your time-lapse techniques, because you've done some spectacular time-lapse where knowing where to position the camera so that you've got the right field of view, and you have somehow figured out the storm is going to move from left to right or whatever, so it's not going to leave your field of view. That's an art form. And is that just from experience?
When it leaves my field of view, I just delete that and you don't see it.
Yeah,
So. Now, you're following these storms, from initiation. So, you kind of learn. Sometimes you get an idea of where the storm's going, it's going to do. If you do it enough, you can tell when the storm's about to turn right. You're like, it's about to make its right turn, and whether it's an intuition or a pattern recognition, I don't know. I'm not being really scientific about it, but a lot of what I do is hunch based.
Well, as we learned, though, at El Reno tornado, they don't always behave in exactly the way that we theoretically expected them to. So you are taking a high risk out there with a storm, especially if you're traveling alone. That's got to be a challenge.
With the El Reno tornado, it behaved exactly the way I thought it was. I think the danger comes in is that I was there early and I had time to prepare, whereas if I was somewhere else and maybe was off on my forecast, now I have to punch through the core and I'm focusing on roads. That's where I could have been in, just as much trouble if I was on the north side of the storm, because when the storm first initiated, it was tracking northeast, and then it went tornado warned and it's going east, and then it's just moving south. And so I was right there south of it, and you can just see it. It's not going east, it's coming south. So I was in a good spot to do that. But so it's not as much as the storm surprise you as you're doing a lot out there. And the most thing that what you're doing most is focusing on the road. And there's times where, I'll chase you. You just can't look at your radar. You can't, you're trying to get somewhere. And that's where I think you'll get into some danger. But I think anybody should have known what El Reno was doing. That's not saying that if you got caught in it, you're dumb, or it's just unfortunate that's why you don't want to punch cores in front of an HP, probably.
Right, and you just used a bunch of words there that maybe people wouldn't know about.
Right.
HP is a storm with heavy precipitation, and if you are driving through that heavy precipitation, usually the tornado is going to be dropping in the south and west corner quadrant of the storm, or away from the rain.
A lot of rain, a lot of wind, a lot of hail, and this day we knew was going to be bad. So, a wedge tornado in a high precipitation storm is going to be very, very difficult to see.
And I've seen in some of your videos also that you have all captured, and I'll put that in quotes, hail events. Often your windshield captures these hail events. So what are the what's your relationship with your insurance agent? How does that work?
Well, I have really good insurance, and I'm afraid of losing it, so I don't claim any of my hail damage. The windshields are, $100, $125 to fix, and the hail dents, storm chasers wear those with arm, like warriors. Those are our battle scars. We're proud of them. I thought, and I don't have as many as I'd like. I'm thinking about going out there and hitting my car with a hammer so that it looks like I've
that's just sad.
Been more road worn.
Shoot. Well, are there any stories you want to relate, things I've not asked about that you think would be interesting for the audience?
I should probably talk about Cooperton 2012, which was my big goof, and where I got run over by a small tornado, and so that could have been my El Reno.
Now tell me about the Cooperton. Where is that?
This is in Oklahoma, and this was April 12th, I think, 2012, or April 13th. Yeah, it was Friday the 13th, as a matter of fact. And there was the storm was heading over the Wichita Mountains at close to sunset, which means that's the end of the show. There's just a little bit of existing daylight, and the storm decides it's going to get interesting. And, you drive all the way from Houston. It's the first storm chase of the year for you. You're excited. And I should have bailed, but I stayed under the mesocyclone, and there was I was boxed in. The hail to the north was giant. You could see the baseballs on the roads here. Can't go that way. To the south was the bear's cage, which is the mesocyclone, which is the most unpredictable area. It's the bad spot, and I'm sandwiched in there, and then the roads to the side are just pure mud, so there's nowhere I can really go, and it drops this little tornado, and I'm watching it go to my east, so I'm inside the bear cage, and it's going around me, and I'm standing there and filming it, and then it stops, and it just sits there, and then of course it just makes a left turn and it comes backwards, and it's coming right to me. And then there's a local storm chaser behind me who's just sitting there, and I'm honking, go, go, go. And finally he gets, I get back up, and the tornado lifts. You can see it in the video. The condensation funnel lifts, and then about 10 seconds later the wind just all whirls around the car, and then I sit there and I gather okay, where's the tornado? Where's the gun? And then I look up, and this mile-wide wedge forms, another tornado forms, and I'm directly in the path of this. It was a nightmare scenario. It wouldn't end. I could not escape from tornadoes. It was just, there's one coming this way, there's one coming this way. And then so I'm blazing south into the daylight, and I get into the inflow jet, and it just the road, it's this stream of air that's just feeding into the tornado, and the road turns white like an airplane wing, and the car is just not going, and and that one I lose my cool. I'm saying all sorts of bad words. But I made it out. And what had happened was I'd gotten cocky up to that moment, and that was my wake up, dude.
Well, you used a couple of terms there. We ought to at least talk about the inflow jet is the winds being drawn into the storm, which causes the debris to fly up on the surface. It's not the tornado itself. It's just the strong winds.
Sometimes it does qualify as part of the circulation and tornado. A lot of times sometimes the really powerful tornadoes, the actual inflow jet will cause damage that gets cited as tornado damage.
And then the bear cage is also a term that we've not talked about. So that you're talking about there, the whole cloud presumably is kind of rotating over you, and you're in that spot where it's sort of the center of the rotation, and you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, so your updraft is this rising air, and so, I mean sometimes it'll rising over 100 miles per hour in these powerful storms, and this whole updraft is spinning, and they make the most beautiful cloud structures, and anybody who sees this knows. I mean, if you know nothing about meteorology and you see a rotating mesocyclone, I mean they're almost as beautiful as tornadoes. Sometimes they're more beautiful than the tornadoes they produce. And so inside that area we call the bear's cage, and the RFD it'll grab rain and it'll wrap it around, so it actually is kind of a cage a lot of times.
And RFD is going to be the rear flank downburst.
Rain. We'll just say rain.
Rain. Okay.
Yeah.
Wrapping around that circulation.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, those are beautiful, but best seen from a distance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not underneath them, right?
Yeah, a lot of guys, I'm envious of a lot of guys because you have to choose between, a tornado or the storm structure, which is the mesocyclone, and guys like, Mike Oblinsky and Steve Locke specialize in time-lapse of these mesocyclones, and it's like sometimes I'll be underneath a storm and I'm thinking, this storm isn't doing anything, and then I see Steve Locke's footage, I'm like, oh man, he's 3 miles back, and it's just this beauty. You're just, what am I doing? So you have to choose the tornado. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today, and again, kudos to you for all the videos you've been taking, and I hope you're safe this year and in future years, and then I will continue to show your things in class because I just love to watch them.
I appreciate hearing that. That's always inspiring, and I never get tired of hearing that.